This is A Line Around Your Thoughts, a podcast that centers on conversations with artists, writers, musicians, and creatives from around the Inland Northwest. I'm EJ Iannelli, and joining me in the Roquehart Media Studio today is Katie Patterson Larson, the owner of Art Salvage, and executive director too.
Yes.
No? Yeah. Mm-hmm. So welcome, Katie.
Thank you.
You know, you and I think I've mentioned to you several times now, and one of the reasons I was very eager to bring you in here was I've been just kind of bedazzled by the Instagram presence that you have. And one of the things that I saw recently, and you'll have to explain this to me, Fleece Friday. What on earth is Fleece Friday?
You know, it's whatever you make of it, but you have some alliteration and you can run with it. So our staff that does the social media is just really obviously amazing and tapped into that and sees trends and fun things and sounds and audio ways of thinking of social media that I wouldn't have even thought of. And then we just kind of blend that with the idea of being creative or whatever the stuff we have. And it's pretty funny.
So is Fleece Friday part of a wider trend, or was it you had an abundance of fleeces and you were like, hey, let's turn this into Fleece Friday?
It's not a trend that I know of, but it could be. Yeah, we have a lot of fabric.
Okay. And on that subject, I had kind of been familiarizing myself with your statistics. Mm-hmm. And one of the things, I think you used to have a counter when you were over at the Ash Street location, and you would say, you know, this many pounds of items saved from the waste stream. And last time I was in there, I don't know if it's still there. I didn't happen to see it.
Is it
still
just
there?
in a little different spot.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
But I was kind of stunned by the jump in the number of tons that you've saved from the waste stream, just in going from 2023 to 2024. And I know that there was a move involved in there and stuff like that, so you're in a larger space now. But I think you went from, what was it, like 20,000 to 45,000 pounds of items?
In a year.
Okay.
Yeah, and at the beginning of last year, we were averaging probably about 1,000, maybe to a month. That was pretty average. So people coming through. And then by the end of the year, we hired someone full-time to help with donations and really just help us be organized with that. And the average was close to 3. And we were feeling pretty good about that. And it was pretty much that way at the beginning, probably the first quarter of this year. And then we recently looked at it because we kept feeling like we're busy, but it'll slow down. This is what always happens. You get busy, it slows down. And then we looked at it, and the average recently has been 5,000 to 7,000 pounds per month. So, and it's been pretty steady for the last 4 or 5 months of that increase.
Oh, wow. And I realize now that I'm probably getting ahead of myself because I just kind of take it for granted that everybody's familiar with Art Salvage and what you do, because it is such a community resource. And I think it's kind of at least one of the go-to spots in Spokane for art supplies. Let's kind of step back and talk about Art Salvage for somebody who might not be familiar with it. Art Salvage is about creative reuse and the circular economy. What's the model? What is your mission, your MO?
Yeah, creative reuse centers, the industry, they're all over the world, and they have been for a long time as a place that people could go as an organization. And so most of them are nonprofits, but not always. Sometimes they're family run. Usually they're small businesses if they're not nonprofits. And sometimes they're adjacent to a city solid waste or a school, something like that. But the whole idea is just diverting creative materials from the waste stream. And I've traveled and visited other creative reuse places, so they can look different and have a different feel. But that whole mission of just how do you make art supplies accessible for people is really what it's all about. And
you founded it in 2018, if I remember correctly?
We became a nonprofit in 2015.
Okay.
And then we had our first physical location in 2018.
Oh, okay. Yeah. What did you do during those early years? Like, where did you put the stuff? Was that your basement?
Oh, it was. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. There's a spokesman article, and the photographer came down to my basement and took a photo, and it was full.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then I remember for me, you kind of popped onto my radar when you moved into the Ash Street next to Spokane Print and Publishing. Yeah. Were they there at the time, or
no.
were they wouldn't go in for another year or two?
Yeah, there was a little bit. So we shared our space with Ammonite screen printers at the time. They actually gave us the heads up that there was a vacancy. And that was a really cool partnership, or, just to have them as neighbors. And then when the space next to us opened up, we had contacted Spokane Print and Publishing and said, "Hey, just so you know."
Oh wow, yeah, and they made
Yeah.
a good location partner in that
Yes,
regard,
yeah,
because it
it was
became
great.
kind of an arts hub.
Yeah.
Was it? I know there's a lot of excitement, and I think one of the last times we connected in a formal capacity was to talk about the new space.
Yeah.
But was there some bittersweet feelings about moving into the larger space? I know there was a lot of excitement, but that being your kind of first home, was
Yeah.
it a little sad leaving?
A little bit. That space was just so fun, and it was quirky, and it had history, and we looked up the history. So,
What was the history?
there's lots of really good things. It was a Piggly Wiggly,
Oh wow, okay.
which I thought was really fun. It was also a bakery at one point, and then it was two different family-run pharmacies. So it was Peacock Pharmacy, and the Mac has a photo of the exterior with their marquee looking down Ash. I can't remember if it's north or south. And then I think it was Ash Street Drug. And there's a couple of news articles in the Chronicle about just different things that happened, like someone came in and stole some cash, and the police, ran after them, kind of things like that.
Yeah, some of the buildings in the neighborhood, I know that we have been able to identify some of their history
Yeah.
through the police blotter. It's the
Oh,
crimes that are
yeah.
associated with them. Historic, going back decades.
Yeah.
But yeah, you kind of find out some of the, I guess, less savory activity that might
Yeah.
have been taking place.
But
there.
I think to answer your question, it was a little sad because that's where we started and people really knew us there. But there were a lot of small things like accessibility of one step up to this space, and then the ramp in the front door was really not accessible. So little things like that. The air conditioning, heating was not very consistent throughout the building. So we were very happy to be moving into something else that didn't have those issues. So that made it pretty exciting.
Yeah, and the new space, I mean, it afforded so much opportunity. I mean, one of which was just the obvious, which was layout.
Yeah.
So it afforded you more space to put the stuff that, made it. Yeah, the display became easier to, just to find what you're looking for. And
Yeah.
I think so much too of Art Salvage is kind of the serendipitous finds, and it made those serendipitous finds a little easier.
Yeah, initially when we looked at that space, we were worried that it felt too blank, too sterile. The front space has drop ceilings and fluorescent lights, and the back has big vaulted ceilings and windows. But really, right away, people said the light in here is so good. So even though it felt like it ended up being a blank slate that we could just fill and make it feel creative and really take on our flavor.
And so you've got this inventory, and you are constantly collecting new inventory and adding to that inventory. Talk me through some of that process, because I think, from my standpoint, I see the drop off and then come in a bit later and then see, everything displayed. But obviously there are stages in between. Is there a filtering stage where you're like, this is just not sale worthy?
Yeah. There are a couple different stages of filtering. So the first one is sort of, we just can't take it, or we can't sell it because it could be soiled or have a scent. So things that we don't want to contaminate everything else, or it's just the wrong fit, right? So some really obvious things. And even though we filter those as they come in, sometimes I think we don't have evidence, but that people really purposely put the nicest thing on the top, and then all the things they don't know if we'll take at the bottom.
I'm sure that goes on. I'm
Yeah.
sure that goes on.
And I don't even know if they're aware of it, but it happens. And then even when we go through it, there's still, some random things that are in there. So there's that first stage of filtering out. And then we do several different sorts. So like if it's a whole bag of fabric, we can just go and put that in fabric. And then we have volunteers that's their expertise, and they love textiles. That's what they're going to do. So they're going to go through again, and then they're going to sort out quilters' cottons from a upholstery fabrics from, so they do a
So
bigger
you have
sort.
media special, or
We do.
material specialists for
Yeah.
everything that comes in.
Yeah.
Oh, wow, that I did not know.
Yeah. And I think that's why when people come in, it feels so inspiring, is because you have people looking at it with that eye of that specialty and thinking, oh, this is the thing we really need to put front and center. Or if we do it like this, or if we cut this into pieces, it's really more affordable and accessible instead of leaving it in such a huge chunk that no one can really, bring it home. So yeah, we're always kind of thinking of those things. And then from that bigger specialty sort, then we try to make things into kind of like bite-sized projects so that volunteers can be involved with that. So maybe they're getting all of one thing together and then saying, do 1, 2, and 3 to this, and then it'll be ready. So then there's those different fine-tuning, might be like packaging something up so it's consistent, so the price is consistent every time, which makes it, we're not reinventing the wheel every time, or maybe it's just kind of tying it up in a little bundle or something like that.
Yeah, I have seen the presentation on some of it. So, you do have items that are just kind of grouped, but then there also is that special care taken and that makes it a little more appealing when it's kind of bundled together.
Yeah.
Pricing, that's interesting because, obviously I maybe there is sort of a guide for how these materials should be priced. Is it kind of arbitrary? Like, this is what we think it's worth? Or is there some sort of structure in place where similar art salvage organizations say this is what the going rate is?
Yeah, that's such a good question. We've come up with a structure. And a big shout out to all the other creative reuse places that have social media or share things online, because we definitely spent the first couple of years before we had that space just gleaning from what other people did and just looking at different ways that they did things. So that was huge. And then knowing other thrift stores. So some of the things are things you could find at a thrift store. We have volunteers that are really good at garage sailing. So again, just kind of knowing what our area, because I think that was the biggest thing of, we couldn't just do what someone in Seattle did. We couldn't do what someone in Texas did. We really had to be available to Spokane. Mm-hmm. And so kind of taking those structures and then over time tweaking it.
Yeah.
But we have, I have had other creative reuse centers reach out and say, hey, can you send us your pricing guide? Like, oh, that's not really one document. I would if I could, but ours doesn't look like that.
So you've adapted it to the local market. Mm-hmm. What are some of the things that you have to take into account for Spokane? Is Spokane very price conscious? Does Spokane, go through a certain material more than, say, other places?
I think people are price conscious, and they will tell us if they think we should do it differently, which is usually very helpful. And then there's also the consideration of just the volume that comes to us. So if it's something really straightforward, like a license plate, I would love for that to be the same price as what the junk store has, because I'm not trying to compete with them. Yeah. I don't need to be more or less. It's the same item. They're kind of all the same. But I feel like the best example is rubber stamps. I don't know if you know this, but there are a lot of rubber stamps in this world. And
I'm probably not aware of just how many. Yeah,
you really aren't. They just keep coming. So we've actually redone the price. Now it feels kind of silly. Like, we've had little charts where you have different sized boxes, and then the volunteers would put the stamp in the box to see which one it fit in, and that would tell you what price it's going to be. And we used a price gun to price every single stamp. But then over time, as we saw how it just kept more coming in, and then we realized this is something we need to be efficient about it on our end. And if people still want them, it doesn't need to be really valuable, because it's better that we're taking them in instead of telling people, don't donate that, we can't handle it, or having them sit in the back. Then let's just get them out. Let's just get them to people that are going to use them.
And do they move? Do the rubber stamps? So the rubber stamps come in. Obviously,
They
people are
do.
offloading them. Do they then
Yes.
go back out?
Yes. And there are people that donate. They were reps. So they sold rubber stamps.
Oh wow. Okay.
And so they have huge collections. So sometimes they're coming in like several 100 pounds of just rubber stamps at a time. And there's different kinds. There's the ones on the wood. There's ones that are not mounted. There's these acrylic ones that come in these little, they look like DVD cases. So there's a big variety. And there's different lines, like different styles. And
were you this much of a connoisseur of rubber stamps before this, or is this
no, this is
something you've acquired?
Yeah. Yeah. So it's just one of those things that we work through of if we're seeing it just back up, then we want to do whatever makes it easier to get to people for someone to use it. And we might have to discount the price, or we have a bulk system. So then you can just mix and match all the bulk things into a really affordable bag and make it easier.
What else does Spokane have a lot of? So rubber stamps, I would never have guessed that, Spokane's, doing a brisk trade in rubber stamps. What are some other things that you see a lot of?
Probably the biggest volume and probably by pound is just textiles. So fabric itself, I think it's just one of those hobbies where it's fun to collect. And then you don't always get to all your hobbies. That's kind of why Art Salvage, like any creative reuse place is there, is that I think that artists and makers, you can get into a project, you can do it. There might be a lot of different reasons you don't continue. It could just be that you're moving on to the next media. It could be age and ability, or just the fact that people are moving. So it feels like this really nice circular economy of being able to share those items after they're not being used.
Well, I even think of just the accumulation of too much stuff. You don't even necessarily have to be moving on, but I think with textiles, our household has a tendency to hang on to textiles because it's like, we might need that to patch something. We might need that for some unnamed project down the road. And so you have textiles are kind of an easy thing to hoard. And then all of a sudden you realize you've got an awful lot of them and they have to go somewhere, probably to Art Salvage. Yeah.
And I think similarly framing. So both textiles and framing are things that...
But frames are expensive.
Yes,
frames.
but the thing is that styles change. So when decor changes and taste changes, I feel like I like textiles. So maybe they're more appreciated over decades. And then, maybe by the time they come back to us, it's back in style. But frames get really dated. And I think that's a huge reason why there's a lot of frames too. And then... there's just a lot of those.
What is one of the strangest objects that's ever come through the door?
Well, recently, it's talking about those things that get kind of tucked in and not noticed. A volunteer was going through, I think it was mostly vintage style things and like sewing notions. So it's someone's little sewing kit, and there's little jars and full of thread and bobbins. And then they opened up a box and it had human adult teeth in it.
Oh, wow.
So
okay. Yeah.
Things like that where it makes sense. If I was going to stash something like that and it felt personal, it might be with my little boxes and treasures. But then if they either forgot or someone else in the family made the donation. And so... Yeah. And do you ever have somebody coming back and asking and saying, hey, I donated this, or a relative donated on my behalf, and this was tucked in amid all this other stuff? Are there any stories along those lines? When we first opened, and maybe just because the concept was kind of new and people hadn't put it together, we had someone come in and see something that they had donated and said, oh, I really don't think you should sell that, because someone, I think it was an art piece maybe, that someone had made for them, and they hadn't really connected that if they donated it, their friend might come in and see their handmade item.
Oh, yeah.
And so I think we did pull it for them and like let them decide what to do with it. But usually people don't. No, they're really, by the time they come, they're ready. They're ready to move on usually.
Yeah, because I can see, one of my biggest fears is parting with something,
Yeah.
and then realizing that it's gone, and 6 months down the road or a year down the road, say,
Yeah.
oh no, it's we donated that or something like that.
Well,
And I think that's a pretty common fear for a lot of
Yeah,
people,
I mean,
throwing out the
that's
thing that you eventually need.
why
Yeah.
I have a lot of stuff. Yeah. But one time I was tidying things on the floor and going through frames, and you turn it around, and then you have that second where you realize that there's something about it, and then the next second where I realized it was a framed photo of my sister and I in the J.C. Penney's photograph when we were very small, like 3 and 5. So my parents had donated something, and they just old frames,
Right.
and forgot to look through. And they were still, so it's sitting on my desk now.
Oh, cool.
I kept it.
So
Yeah.
you were able to salvage the salvage, and
Yeah, it was $1. Yeah.
And has there ever been something of incredible value that's come through where you think, like, I'm thinking like somebody's got old baseball cards or comics that are tucked in amid all this, and you think this is DC Comics #1 or something like that.
Yeah, we've definitely had things where we thought, oh, this seems really neat or really unique, and then you look it up, and you have to be careful about comparing things online, but
Yeah.
where multiple, not just one, but people are selling that same like vintage railroad map for several $100s. So there are definitely some really like some of those ephemera kind of things that people never thought would last, but because of the history behind them are pretty interesting and valuable. We had a little, like a pin that must just be a particular style that is unique, and again was like several $100s, and didn't really look, it just looked like costume jewelry.
Yeah.
So we had no idea. But yeah, there's things that come through.
Well, I think of the adage, one man's junk is another man's treasure. And I guess you can get into a big philosophical debate over what has value. And maybe that's something that the circular economy inherently prompts, because there are so many things that I know that we don't want and have donated to Goodwill, for example, but I know that somebody else out there somewhere would probably think this is the find of the century.
Oh, yeah. And that's really interesting to see if it's just a small amount of dated, it's considered ugly and not desirable. And then you wait a little more. So if, your kids' generation sees it now, they think it's fun.
It's
and
vintage,
cool.
it's retro. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's actually really funny to see how different people react to the things that come through, because many of our volunteers are retired. It's why they have time during the day. So their reaction might be different than some of our staff that's in their 20s. And so we get a pretty good kick out of that, of how people even just perceive the value of something.
Yeah. And you mentioned the volunteers, and I know that in the annual reports, and which I'm so grateful that you put out, because it does, I know not everything can be quantified, but it is kind of impressive to see some of those numbers like what I was talking about earlier. And just in terms of volunteer hours, Art Salvage seems to really draw a lot of volunteers who are willing to put in thousands of hours a year.
Yeah. I think the community that we've built makes it a really fun space. We've had volunteers reach out and just say, I don't think you know how valuable this has been. So maybe they're new to town, or just we're in a different time of their life and looking for those connections. And so I think that comes naturally with bringing all these different people together, and that they truly, genuinely want to be there. And so these relationships build, and the fact that things are different every day and changing makes it fun. So we've definitely had some really dedicated volunteers that have really shaped how we've been able to do things.
And about how large is your volunteer pool at the moment?
Right now, I think as far as people that are scheduled, so they might come weekly or monthly, maybe 60 people.
Wow, that's impressive.
Yeah, so we do have those people that come just monthly, or maybe a couple people that do like special projects. So that increases it. And then we have a pretty good load of volunteers coming every day.
And they are kind of augmented by how many staff? 5 staff people?
We have 4 officially right now. And
including yourself?
Yes.
Okay.
And we do have a community inclusion staff that comes and helps with some cleaning once a week. And then we're going to be hiring soon.
Oh, is that news you care to share? Is there a particular position that
Well,
you're...
yeah, I can share. It's not online yet, but it will be very soon. We're going to be looking for someone to do basically merchandising. So helping with the back, get to the front. So really getting it out fast, making it look nice, keeping it tidy. So it's just, there's so much going on. We just need to build capacity and do more of that.
I thought you were talking about merch like your T-shirt.
Oh, no, more like display and... Yeah,
I see.
yeah.
I see. Because I think the fact that you have the merch, you've got the stickers, you've got the T-shirts.
Yeah.
It shows, I think, that Art Salvage has built this community around it and has become kind of an institution, like I alluded to at the outset. You know, it's become a go-to place for a lot of the region's creatives to get the materials they need. And yeah, so do you feel as though Art Salvage has kind of morphed into something way more than simply merchandising, but also it's a community hub?
I hope so. Yeah, that's really like what I think I've always envisioned, that it's like exactly what we are is what people already have in their basements, their craft rooms. That's I think why it feels really attractive. But the value is that it doesn't have to be in your basement or your craft room. And once you multiply it by all this stuff, it becomes it's that circular economy. It's just a place for it to come through and then get to the next person. And it might go directly to a person. It might go to another nonprofit. So we're able to funnel things to other groups that need materials that don't, like their budget's not big enough, or they just have a need for more creative things.
Yeah, and you work with schools. If I'm not mistaken, you do an Educators Day.
Yeah. So that's our biggest annual event. So we set up tents outside and fill up tables with stuff, and we just ask that teachers come and please take a lot of stuff. And they do. They show up, so that's really great. And then throughout the year, we do mini grants. So we have people apply and tell us what their need is. So it could be an ongoing program, so they need to restock their craft supplies, or it could be an event. So
help me get a fix on craft supplies. Are we talking like pencils and markers, or are we talking canvases, frames, rubber stamps?
Yeah. For the mini grants, it could be anything. So anything that we have, when we first started, people kept reaching out and saying, "Can you make us a basket? Can you do this?" And we realized how much work we would have to do to coordinate and to communicate and get what they needed. And then we thought, what if we just let them come and pick it out? So we give them a dollar amount, and then they just come and shop and reach that amount and get to take it back to their program.
Oh, that's so cool.
Yeah.
And I want to talk about some of the additional programming, like the workshops that you do, but it occurred to me that we've been talking about, some of the quirkier stuff that you take in. What are some things that you do take, and what are some things, and I know that you probably, you're tired of giving the list, but the list of things that you do take and definitely don't take.
Yeah, what we do take is art supplies, so fine art supplies, so almost anything you could think of that would be in an art store. Craft supplies, so the things that are could be kids' crafts, and people draw that line different places, but like paper arts is a really good example. So the rubber stamps and the embellishments and all those kind of things. And then paper goods fall into that category. So like envelopes, and we do have some office supplies, but just because artists can use, paper clips and folders and organizers, so those things as well. And then textiles is a huge,
right.
So yarn, fabric, notions, all those kind of things. And then vintage, which is really just open to things that we decide are cool and old. And then the other section that we have is like found objects.
And that's the bit that intrigues me, because you'll have like pieces that are associated with old board games.
Yeah.
And I think this isn't something that would necessarily occur to me as, it's something you would incorporate into an art piece, but it's when you go in there and you see it that you say, I could use that. And of course, that's going to be one of those things that people have among their couch cushions is, all the stray game board pieces and things like that.
Yeah. And that's the piece where I feel like people really light up and get
Yeah.
excited, like, oh. And then I think some people come in with just a really functional need. And this is, I feel like part of my impetus is, when you go into the hardware store and you don't know the name of the thing, you just think, so if they ask if you need help, I can't answer that, but it needs to be this thick and that long and this kind of flexibility. And so the people that come in and maybe they came in with a partner and then you say, oh, what are you making? What are you doing with this? Oh, well, I'm going to fix my something is really, that's also creative reuse, is being able to fix whatever you have.
You talk about your impetus, and what was the impetus behind even founding Art Salvage? Was it simply because you had accumulated stuff and thought, maybe this needs a bigger platform? Or was it that you saw a need with, providing art supplies to the Spokane creative economy? Or a little bit of both?
Kind of some of those. It was, I had recently moved back to Spokane from Portland, and Portland has a really, really amazing creative reuse center. So just missing, at that time, I think I was probably missing all the things from my previous experience. And also at the same time, I was not working. I was taking care of young kids, but I was looking for a way to become involved in the art community. And so I think I was seeing a need for more affordable classes and programming kind of things. And so now, 10 years down the road, we're still trying to build the programming and have more access to that. But in the meantime, I think whenever I don't even know how the spark actually popped into my head, but when that idea of a creative reuse center came to me, it felt like, well, this seems like a perfect opportunity. There's nothing like it yet. And I could imagine what it was going to be. Yeah. And so that's kind of how it started.
And you talk about the programming, and you've got the maker meetup, I think that's monthly. I saw that you also have kind of mending workshops, and I'm assuming that those teach practical skills in how to repair things, which is kind of a lost art.
Yeah.
What are some other programming options that you've got at Art Salvage?
Yeah, I'll just mention that both of those are more of a community group, so just of people getting together and being able to,
but using your space to do so.
But in our space, so absolutely. And then we do have a regular workshop that's for kids on the second Thursday of the month. So, and that one is really the idea that focused on reuse, of course, but we do a different project each month, and just usually we come up with a material that we want to use, and then just thinking of, what's a project kids could do, and for a wide range of ages. So we say like 3 to 12, I think, or 6 to 12, one of those. But young kids. And so I like to leave it open enough that we give an example, we present an idea, and if kids are either pretty young and want to go about it a different way, that it still works within that framework. And then for kids that really pick up on that or get really excited, they might make multiples of it, or they might we have a wall of materials. So then when they realize that they can access it, they start going over and getting new things or coming up with new projects. And that's what that hour is for, is just really introducing the kids to creative reuse and getting those ideas going.
And I know that the pandemic put a lot of things on hold, and programming was one of those things. So I'm guessing that you've been building back post-pandemic and kind of, reinvigorating your programming. Is there anything new or that you're going to be introducing programming-wise that you think people should check out?
Yeah, we're doing more collaborations. We're starting. We have a class this Saturday with Spokane Stained Glass. So that was a really fun collaboration where they have scraps, we have scraps. they had an instructor already picked out. We have the space. So that one's a really fun one. So we're hoping to do more of those where we always want our programming to be about reuse. We don't need to teach art foundations because those are already, there's really great classes being taught in Spokane already for those kind of things. But anything that can really encourage people to think outside the box.
Yeah.
And then I think there's a huge amount of room with textile mending, that kind of learning of people learning how to use their sewing machine, practicing basic sewing skills just so they could make their own clothes, which can be very sustainable and things like that.
And do you find that you have to work as hard to get folks to understand or appreciate the concept of creative reuse? You know, you talked about when you moved from Portland and this was kind of novel in the Spokane area. Is it something that you find that a concept that you still have to kind of explain to people, or do people now just get it?
I think it does seem like we don't have to explain it as much. It seems like it.
That's encouraging.
Yeah. That it
and I'm sure that
easier.
in part is because of what Art Salvage is doing, but also
Hopefully.
maybe creative reuse is becoming more of a popular or mainstream concept.
Yeah. I do remember as we started out that sometimes we give the pitch and people just would look at us blankly and like, well,
it's not too hard
for everyone. So, yeah, it seems easier now.
And, finally, you've moved into this larger space and there's been this period of transition, and I guess you've been finding your feet and saying, okay, how do we maximize the potential of this space? Are you where do you find yourselves now? Are you in a period where you're like, hey, we just kind of want to focus on merchandising and focus on optimizing this space? Or are you already kind of looking ahead to something more grandiose, more ambitious?
I guess, yes, we are at a place of thinking about building capacity. That last year was really that full year almost of being reopened, and we had a big staff turnover, which happens when you move, and we added staff. So it felt like such a transitional year of training and really just coming together as a team. And then this year felt like, okay, we work really well together, and then it just started. Everything kind of just exploded on us. Of it's been busier. We've had more donations, and so it does make us think about all the ways to grow, but still be sustainable business-wise.
Yeah.
We don't want to grow too fast. If something like the pandemic happened again, we don't want to have it be so tragic that it can't continue. So I think our first steps are just building capacity and being really creative with the space we have. And the move was a lot.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Yeah. So
and I don't want to seem like I'm exhibiting pressure to do more and to grow, because there's a lot to be said for, we're going to keep doing what we do and keep doing it well. And that's going to be our primary and sole focus.
Yeah. We're still in that space.
Okay. But you feel like the new building is working out, and and does it feel like home?
It does, yeah. It feels like we've been there a long time.
That's important.
Yeah. And we're still rearranging the furniture, and we knew there was potential when we moved in. So
cool. So that ends that portion of the interview. I'm not sure if you're prepared for what comes after that, but there is always kind of an epilogue to these, and that is the lightning round.
Oh.
Yeah. So this isn't going to test any, any strict knowledge. This just kind of opens up. So I see. Do you have something stronger than water in there?
We'll see.
First question, always an either or.
Okay.
Would you rather see a play or a musical?
Ooh. I like both, but I'd probably go to a musical.
Okay, you're somewhat partial to the singing and dancing. Do you have a favorite musical?
Ooh. I don't. I like seeing things that are new, so I would go to the next thing that I haven't seen yet.
Okay. Is there a musical that you have seen recently that you think, oh, that was a worthwhile experience?
You're really surprising me here. I wasn't
That's
prepared.
the lightning round for a reason. Yeah. And it's okay because usually when the question is posed, that's when your mind goes blank and you're like, I just saw something last week and can't remember the name.
Exactly. That's how I feel.
So, okay. Well, maybe there's a school musical coming up or something like that you can.
There probably will be. Yes.
All right. Second question.
Okay.
I had actually talked about this earlier when I said that my greatest fear, well, maybe not my greatest fear, but one of my fears is parting with something and then realizing that I could have used that thing that I parted with. Is there something that you have parted with, and this is open to anything, that you regret or you miss?
I am pretty sure that I was being very responsible in cleaning out some keys at my house this year. And it turns out that maybe I got rid of a key that was very necessary. So it felt like it taught me a lesson that I probably shouldn't get rid of things.
Yeah, and that is the lesson. So for all the things that you do get rid of and you're happy to see the tail end of, and that you never miss again, there's that one object and you think that's why I should never throw anything out, and just put it in storage bins.
Exactly.
Did you got the lock changed though?
I found a replacement key. I had to buy it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow. So there's a lesson in there. Favorite childhood cartoon or television show?
Ooh, remember the snorkels?
Oh, I do. They were kind of Smurf-like, but they had the little
Yes.
orange, I think they were,
They're
and had the little. Yeah.
Yeah, I was really intrigued by those.
Okay. Were you a regular watcher?
I wasn't
of the
really
Snorkel?
allowed to watch
It's
TV, so
Oh, see, this was what I was worried about because, every once in a while there are folks who are like, we didn't really watch TV in my house, and I was raised on a steady diet of TV, so it's different to my experience.
Yeah.
So, when you were allowed to watch TV or you did have access to a DV, you watched the Snorkels and enjoyed it very much.
Oh yeah.
Okay, that seems like a niche cartoon.
I think it was
though.
right before or after the Gummy Bears.
Oh, okay.
That was a good song too. The theme song.
That actually, every once in a while, that will pop into my head, and I'll within the confines of my house burst into song. So it was any other television shows like towards adolescence? Like, were you into like Facts of Life or Different Strokes or anything like that?
My So-Called Life.
Oh,
That
okay.
was a good one.
Claire Danes, wasn't it?
Yeah,
Early Claire Danes? Yeah. Okay. I told you I was raised on. Okay, and finally, the most creative Halloween costume that you've had. Do you have one?
I've had?
Yeah. Do you
Could it
have
be
a
one
favorite?
that I made?
It could be one that you made. When I think of my favorite Halloween costume, it was one that was actually made for me, and so there's a little sentimental value. So I don't know if.
Okay, I had a good one. It was probably in middle school, and it involved a clear trash bag and then a lot of water balloons, but filled with air. And so they were jelly beans. So I was a bag of jelly beans. And it was really funny because I went trick-or-treating with a friend in a different neighborhood. So I had to get in a car wearing a garbage bag of balloons.
And did it go down well? Or did people say, "What are you?"
I have to say, I don't think people knew.
Okay.
It probably needed a label.
Yeah, but that kind of ruins it. I saw a post where it was from the 70s, and it was another TV show, Laverne and Shirley, and people had worn the masks, but then they had like a plastic sheet that identified who they were, and I thought, well, that kind of defeats the costume. So, yeah.
Are you familiar with the box trolls?
I am. Yeah.
So I saw a box the other day that said fish on it, and I had that. I was like, oh, it's a Halloween costume already. Just get inside.
Do you do more creative Halloween costumes, you yourself or your family, simply because you have access to all these materials, or is like it not for you?
I love costumes.
Cool. Okay.
Halloween, I could, give or take, but
just costumes in general.
Costumes and creating the stuff, I do really like that. Last year we made a sandwich. One of my kids said they want to be a sandwich. And so,
very cool. And what did that look like?
Well, we found foam, like white foam that was 4 inches thick, big sheets of it, and cut it, and then painted the edges to look like the crust. And then we used different pieces of stuff that we probably found at Art Salvage. So foam,
Textiles.
And so there was lettuce and other sandwich innings. And then we went to thrift stores to find her clothes that would be lettucey and
tomatoey and hammy and things like that.
Yeah.
Oh, very cool. Well, that's a costume idea
That's
for,
fun.
Somebody who's listening is like,
Yes.
I was stumped for costume ideas.
Now you know.
Katie, I want to thank you so much for coming in today and talking about all things Art Salvage and Halloween costumes.